Oh my God. I am so excited, you guys. Hello, you're here. You're here, and I'm here. And look, Squeezel the dog is here on my lap. And we had that amazing intro that the incredible Leslie Colas in the Philippines designed for us. If you're watching this right now, can you just in your living room, please just clap for Leslie. Leslie made that gorgeous intro. And none of this can happen without gorgeousness. Like, look at the little symbol in the upper right corner, you guys. Katie Church, give me a break. That is Leslie making that happen. That's not me. I am not capable of any of that. That is Leslie, everybody. Steve Spar is here. Emily's here. Sarah Vogel, hello. So good to see you guys. Listen, Squeezel woke up when I said Emily's name. So I think you can take that to mean you're on a deep spiritual path of awakening, Emily, because Squeezel doesn't wake up for nobody, for just any old chump on the street. All right. I'm so excited to be doing this. I've had this idea, to do something like this brewing for some time. And poor Leslie, she could tell you if she were willing to come on camera, how many iterations of this we've gone through. But this feels like the most authentic version of it. And I'm really excited to start sharing this with everybody weekly. So basically, Bill from Oregon, good to see you. Welcome, Doc Bill. I like that nomenclature. So today we're going to do a very wild thing. But before we do it, I want to kind of explain a couple pieces about consciousness, spirituality, and the emotional body, and what the relationship between consciousness, spirituality, and the emotional body are, so that we can understand why we might do such a thing called opening the Akashic records of anyone or anything. And what do the Akashic records offer us? And what do the Akashic records, hi, Cindy Foley, good to see you. What do the Akashic records have to do with consciousness? So I'm going to lay out some structures of the human form. No big deal. I'm going to do this gesture. This is the wax on, wax off gesture from the 1980s filmic event known as the Karate Kid. So let's talk about how the body-mind organism is created in time-space, what the Akashic records are, and what the relationship between the body-mind organism, the Akashic records, and consciousness are. And why would we look at any of that? Because we are people who are interested in understanding the nature of the universe, A. B, we are people on a healing path, and or C, we are people on a spiritual path. And by healing, I really mean anything from sometimes I get a little sad and I don't know what to do with it, to I had a ton of abuse in my childhood and I'd like to feel whole and I'd like to feel not limited by my pain from the past, and I don't quite know how to do that. So I'm speaking broadly when I use the term trauma or when I use the term healing. Okay, so if you're on a healing path, you want to understand these concepts. If you're on a spiritual path, whether it has to do with, I'm trying to learn how the camera works. Is this over here? What's happening? I'm learning. I did it. If you're on a spiritual path, you want to understand how these pieces work in consciousness so that you know what's happening to you and when. Okay. So one of the biggest problems human mammals, I don't know if you've noticed, but one of the biggest problems human mammals have is we regularly don't know what to do with our emotions. If you're super grounded and integrated and healthy, okay, and you had perfect parents who mirrored you perfectly and were very loving and compassionate, but also had boundaries and taught you how to be a person, and they loved you when you got hurt, but they also were like, you could do it. And they said, get up when you scraped your knee and go achieve that thing. Then you had perfect parents and you were perfectly held, then probably you're someone who has an organic, innate ability to process your emotions, because that's what perfect, excellent parenting, theoretically, in a perfect universe, teaches human beings how to do. Unfortunately, not many of us had perfect parents. And so a lot of us, our parents are human beings, and they were dealing with trying to regulate their feelings too. So they were like, I don't know, I get mad, or I don't, or I yell at my kids, or I say never have feelings, ball them up in a little ball and never express them. If you're a wasp, but if you're Italian, you're going to say all the feelings to all the people all the time. And I'm generalizing to make a joke. We don't believe these generalizations anymore, but for comedy purposes, I'm saying them, but they're not real. Let's all take a breath. Now, we all become adults, and then certain things don't get processed from our childhoods or our injuries or our past lives, by the way, which are super relevant to this conversation. So we carry stuck, dense, heavy energies into our present time and to our present lives. And then we wonder why we're having problems in relationships or with money or moving forward or feeling whole. Any of you out there just want to feel whole and high functioning and not feel like you're constantly having to like catch up with life and just like survive life, right? We want to feel so whole and so centered and so spiritually activated and awake that we have the energy required to rocket ship the body, mind, organism of ourselves forward in time space in a way that is fulfilling to us individually and hopefully contributes something to society at large. Okay. And you can't do that when you're spending all your time and energy just trying to survive your past trauma. So that's why we do spiritual healing. That's why we do therapy. That's why we're on a spiritual path. That's why we're trying to understand ourselves. Great. So that's the emotional body. And you can imagine that happening down in the second chakra, down in the low belly, below the belly button, but above the genital area. And just to simplify, emotions are not just in one place, but we'll just say a lot of them happen there. So we'll just locate them there now for the sake of conversation. You've got your emotional body living inside your physical body. Now, eventually what starts to happen is you might start to develop what's called a spiritual connection. You might start to meditate or chant or practice kirtan or chant, what's it called? Or practice remembrance if you're in the Sufi path, or you might practice prayer work if you're on a Christian lineage path. Okay. You might be doing 12-step work, doing your work in the steps in the 12-step programs, which is a spiritual path, believe it or not. Very, very, very illuminating, powerful spiritual path. In fact, as many of you know, I teach a class. I've taught classes on working a fourth step. I've taught classes on Kabbalah. Exactly. I've taught classes on working all 12 steps for non-addicts, because that's how powerful the 12 steps have been in my reality. They're very powerful spiritual paths. So whatever your spiritual path may be, perhaps you get on one because you found that you have an emotional body and you have a physical body, and now you're curious about the next level of consciousness. Or you have an emotional body and a physical body, and you've discovered that in therapy, you can't quite get at all of your stuff. Like maybe you understand your childhood now, but the heaviness and the density of it from the past is not shifting inside of you in a real way that you can feel. You don't feel different. You're still carrying the stuff, even though you understand why you're mad at your mom or what your dad did to you or whatever. And you're like, I should be over it, but you can't get over it. And you maybe are stuck and haven't been able to move certain emotions through your physical body. Many people come to spirituality for that very reason, because you're looking for a way through your stuff and a way out of your stuff. We're all looking to be liberated from the densities that slow us down and limit us and stop us from being sovereign, whole vessels of light. Now, as it happens, you guys, we happen to be sitting in the middle of, this is like real serious business right here. We are sitting in the middle of a time period in consciousness for the human race on Earth, where consciousness itself, if you think of consciousness as like an ocean wave that moves through the ocean of humanity, there's a wave of consciousness moving through the ocean of humanity. And what that wave is doing is it's elevating humanity's, you could say, spiritual state. And this wave is so big and so strong right now that it is activating people at a rapid race and a rapid pace. Why is that? It just is. Blame it on astrology, blame it on divine timing, call it whatever you want to call it. But we are in a moment where there is a tidal wave. It's actually a series of many tidal waves of conscious awakening actively flowing through the ocean of humanity. Now, the truth is it's flowing through the ocean of something much bigger than humanity, which is the galaxy and the universe. Okay. But humanity is feeling it the way humanity is feeling it because we have this annoying thing called a nervous system. If any of you are anything like me, there have been many days in your life where you've thought, if only I didn't have to have this goddamn nervous system. If only I didn't have to feel pain. If only I could just transcend my physical body and its annoying limitations, I'd be doing pretty freaking great, right? I could do whatever I want to do if I wasn't like worried about how I was going to feel, if it wasn't going to make me exhausted. So humanity has a hard time when waves of consciousness come through the ocean of the collective, because we have nervous systems, and the nervous system makes you feel pain, and it makes you be present, and it hurts when you wake up. Waking up hurts for human beings, and it's why so many people don't want to do it. People like to avoid pain. They don't, I want to stay in the frame. This is so funny because the way the camera works on this particular app, everything's reversed. So for me to like be in the middle of the frame like this right now, I have to like, it's like so inorganic. Anyway, that was just entertainment. So in order for humanity to wake up, it has to be willing to go through pain. But humanity's favorite addiction is pain avoidance at all freaking costs, whether that comes through overeating, drugs and alcohol, sex and love addiction, TV addiction, avoidance, just denial, whatever your flavor is. Humanity is real good at finding ways around facing its pain. My favorite one, and part of what we're here to talk about today, is spirituality, right? Spiritual bypass is a really popular way to avoid pain in the human race. Boy, do young millennial people on Instagram love to tout their newfound spirituality in a way where if you listen closely, you realize, okay, cool, you learned some highbrow concepts, but you have not processed what's going on in your first, second, third, and fourth chakras at all. You're just living up here in the realm of infinite possibility where there's no pain. And like, I'm going to start my farm business online. And you can start any business you want, and infinite possibility is real. You do you, young friend. But what I would offer is careful what you call spiritual ascension work, and careful what you call spirituality when you haven't done your emotional work. Just because you went to a weekend workshop and can transmit some Reiki doesn't mean you know who you are yet. It also doesn't mean you're a master yet. Slow your millennial and younger than that roll. Take a breath and get real. How mad are you at things? How much trauma are you carrying? Do you even know what it is to bring the light of consciousness down into the down part of your body? Maybe not. And that's okay. I don't mean to judge you, but I do mean to offer in a sassy, irreverent way, which is my style, this perspective that we need in our culture right now, which is you don't get to just think positive thoughts and that's it. Not if what you want is to actually awaken, and not if what you want is to actually heal, and not if what you want is to be whole and authentic to who you are, and not if what you want is to live your spiritual dharma. Your dharma, okay, is, and that's like a Buddhist term. I think it's Tibetan in origin, but I'm not exactly sure. Your dharma, when I use that word, what I mean is the soul level calling that you came into this embodiment with. We all embodied in this incarnation, in this lifetime right now, with an individual dharma. Some people's dharma or soul work is just to learn how to love other people. That's it. That's the whole fucking game. Doesn't matter what job you get. Your career doesn't have to have anything to do with your dharma, by the way. But some people came here for their career to be a certain very specific thing. And that is part of their soul work and their dharma. So figuring out what your dharma is requires, which by the way, everybody who comes to me for Akashic Records readings or energy healing, people always want to know their purpose. And the thing is, they'll ask it as their very first question in a session. And I understand the impulse to do that. That makes total sense. But the challenge with asking that as your very first question is, there are so many smaller, deeper, more emotional, body embodiment based questions we have to ask before your dharma can become clear to you. Now, part of what I can do through the Akashic Records is I can see it. I the divine light. I have this weird ability, this psychic empathic thing I can do where I can go into your records and go, okay, what is John Smith's Dharma? Okay, so you're going to work with children and it has something to do with loving your dad or whatever, right? But just because I hand that to you through in my psychic way doesn't mean you're going to take it on. You're only going to take your dharma on through probably, if you're like most people, trying everything other than your dharma first. You're going to need to find out for yourself what your dharma is, because your soul level work in the world, you guys, excuse me, is the thing that will not leave you alone. It's that little niggling voice in the back of your head that's like, you got to do this thing. You got to do the thing. Are you going to do the thing? Have you started the thing yet? Are you doing that thing? And then what happens is all your emotional body stuff from the past comes up. Well, I'm not good enough to do the thing. I'm not ready to do the thing. I need to take one more weekend workshop before I can do the thing. Who am I to do that thing? I'm not ready to do that thing. I'm not good enough. I'm too fat. I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm too pretty. I'm not pretty enough. My dad didn't like me. My mom didn't like me. And we have all of our reasons why we don't do that little thing that in the back of your head you get from consciousness about what you're here to do. Which brings me to the point of, it's very important to understand that conscious awareness comes through you knowing what you know without knowing how you know it. Which, by the way, is a concept I got from the people that access consciousness, which I think is so true. It's turned out to be true. There was a fair amount of stuff those guys taught that I ended up not agreeing with, but there was a ton of stuff in there that I learned from that system, and I like to give credit where credit is due. And they taught me quite clearly, when you just know a thing, you're like, I think, I'm going to do a weird thing on Wednesday nights where I open the Akashic records of consciousness for whoever decides to show up. If you get an idea like that and it won't leave you alone, that is awareness. That is you being aware. That is you hearing your alignment with consciousness. What you then need to become aware of is, what is the particular flavor of your resistance to knowing what you already know without knowing how you know it? One of my favorites is people always want to rationally with their mind understand what they know before they take action on doing what they know. Now, the thing about awareness is it doesn't work that way. You don't actually have to understand what you know in order to know it, because knowing in the way that I'm talking about it with a capital K is not a function of the mind. It's not logical. It's not rational. It's something you grok. You know it in your being. You know it maybe in your body. If you're a gut type in Enneagram parlance, you know it in your gut. If you're a heart type, you know it in your heart. If you're a head type, you know it in your head. But even if you know it in your head, it is not a function of the mind, the thinking monkey mind that wants to understand cognitively. It never fucking will. It never fully will. It can understand to a certain degree, your cognitive monkey mind. But there are things, you guys, that you're going to have to leap off the cliff of before knowing why you're leaping. This thing I'm doing right now makes no sense at all. In a lot of ways. Like if I were looking at this through logic frameworks, I'm not a Buddhist monk. How am I giving a Dharma talk right now? Nobody's paying. Is it worth doing? How am I going to monetize it? Who am I? Who do I think I am? There's a million narratives I could listen to in my mind about why I shouldn't be doing this right the fuck now. But I got to tell you, this one won't leave me alone. And when it won't leave you alone, my best tip to you is probably that's consciousness knocking on your door saying, hey, babe, it's time to take this particular leap. And I'm not going to explain to you why until you leap. Other times you get lucky, right? You get a little knock in consciousness and you kind of already know why, and you get to know why as you leap. But a lot of times, you guys, you're not going to know why you're doing what you're doing, how it's going to work out, if it's going to work out, what it's going to lead to, and you still got to leap. Why? Because leap and the net will appear is a real thing. The little acronym, or not acronym, aphorism, is that what that is? Little phrasey thing that we should we should sew onto a pillow and put on our couches is, yes, we have leap and the net will appear, but leap and into the unknown, trusting that if you don't, it's going to be a really long pillow, you guys. It's going to be a very big pillow with a paragraph on it. Okay. Leap off the edge of the cliff into the unknown, because if you don't, you actually can't move forward. You can't move forward in time space until you leap. And that is why your life is stalled. If your life is stalled, because you think you got to get it all together and get it all figured out and heal all your stuff before you leap. Certain things do need to be healed before certain things can occur. But generally speaking, the main struggle people have, human people, they want to understand, figure it out, heal their shit before they take any fucking leaps. And it doesn't work that way. That's how you get real good at stalling your life and never really moving forward. Okay, so the example would be, I don't know what's going to come of doing this with you guys. I don't know what's coming of this. I just know I have to do it. And so I'm doing it. I'll give you another example. I recently did a stand-up comedy show that was also spiritual teachings and energy healing. Some of you were there. Thank you all so much for coming, by the way, if you came. I did that through an organization called OMA in Pittsburgh. I had never done that before. I'd never brought energy healing into a stand-up comedy show that also had teachings in it. What is that? It's not a thing. But you know what it is? It's a thing that in my conscious awareness said to me, you got to do this thing. Do this thing now. You can do this thing. Nobody else can do this thing. You could do this thing. And I went, well, that sounds crazy. Okay, I'm not going to judge. I'm going to do it. My pleasure, Cindy. Thank you very much. Cindy enjoyed it very much. I bow to you, Cindy. Thank you so much. Any clapping. I'm always open for clapping. So the point is not about me. The point is about you. What is it that you already know because you keep getting the whisper in consciousness that you're trying so hard to figure out or fix or heal before you'll listen to? And what if you could just listen to a little bit of it today? Today is the day. Today's the only day. I'm sorry to break it to you, you could get hit by a bus later tonight and be dead. So what are you waiting for? Seriously. Okay, now, that being said, thank you, Bill. That being said, let's come back to the topic at hand. We have the emotional body and the physical body. Then we have the spiritual body. Beyond the spiritual body is what you could call the realm of consciousness, or you could say it's the silent space from which spirit emanates. Inside the realm of consciousness is everything, and the nothing from which everything emerges. Okay, so in order to try to understand consciousness, we want to think about the Big Bang as a nice sort of metaphor to talk about. Before the Big Bang, if you're familiar with the concept of the Big Bang, and whether you believe in it or don't, okay, if you're someone who doesn't believe in the Big Bang, you don't have to believe in it. Just think of it as a metaphor. Okay, so metaphorically speaking, imagine that before there were any physical objects in the world, there were no trucks or trees or people or bears or kittens or puppies. There were no planets or stars, and it's 5:55. God, the numbers are just in my consciousness all the time right now. We'll talk about the numbers in a little bit. This is one of the cool things that starts to happen in 3D reality, is that you start to live in 5D and 9D and beyond, and the numbers start to talk to you. Or I'm going crazy. Either way, I'm cool with it. It's a lot more fun over here, I'll tell you. So there we were in time space, a big black sheet of nothing. No Big Bang, nothing. Just no phenomenon, no objects, no people, no thoughts, no feelings, just nothing. And then all of a sudden, from the nothing, exploded all phenomenon or phenomena. What's the plural? Is phenomena the singular, or is phenomenon the singular? I don't know. Maybe they're not even related. Grammar. So there was nothing, and then there was an explosion. And from that explosion, all things came into being and began to expand outward in every direction. That expansion from that initial moment is still occurring today. This is why physicists talk about the universe is expanding. It's always expanding. It won't ever not be expanding because of momentum and entropy, but that's a different conversation. So as everything is expanding outward, imagine that the space in which all the things are expanding. Thank you, Bill. Which one is plural? Phenomena or phenomenon? I think it's phenomena. Ooh, the phenomena. Dun, 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 phenomena. Dun, 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 dun. That's for everybody who used to watch Sesame Street. You're welcome. Now, The space in which all phenomena, thank you, Bill, is flowing, the space through which spirituality arises, the space in which your physical body comes into being in 3D form, that space where everything happens is called consciousness. And believe it or not, that space is aware of itself. That's what consciousness means. It means awareness that is aware of its own awareness. Okay. So inside of you, so if you go inside your belly right now and feel whatever sensations are happening in your belly, or if you go into your heart and feel whatever emotions are happening in your heart, if you were to sit with that long enough, it would dissolve into a spiritual energy like wisdom or insight or clarity. And if you were to sit with that spiritual energy for long enough, that itself would evaporate into the field of silent, vast, conscious awareness. Behind every phenomenon is awareness, consciousness. So you could say, and recently I did say in our most recent episode of the podcast, and by the way, if you're not listening to the podcast, I mean, come on, what are you doing in your free time? I can't imagine what other things you might be doing. Do you have like a life and like friends or something? Whatever. But if you need something to listen to, check out All the Answers because it's really great. And my friend Cassidy Brown is my co-host and we have a really good time. But really, the truth be told, we get very sassy and irreverent and we're comedic together and we talk, and then we have a guest on and we open that guest's Akashic records and we ask deep questions and it's really cool. That being said, last week what we did was we opened the Akashic records of consciousness because I was curious and I had some questions. Thank you so much. Cindy loves the podcast. Cassie is fantastic. It's Cassidy, but thank you. He thanks you as well. I wanted to know, specifically what I wanted to know was, does consciousness create spirit, or does spirit or God or the divine create consciousness, or is what we call God or consciousness, God or spirit, is that actually consciousness? And what I was shown quite clearly, which I kind of knew, but I needed to hear it from the horse's mouth, if you will. What I was shown in the records was consciousness is everything I just described. It's the seat or the space through which spirit arises. So then my next question to consciousness was, why do we need spirituality then? Why can't we just hop on over and learn about consciousness? What is the relevance of spirituality? Why not just like have our human feelings, live our 3D lives, and then learn about consciousness, like hop into the energy field of the space that holds all the things. And the awareness I received in the records of consciousness was human beings. Now, this isn't true for all human beings, but most human beings that you meet. Yes, Squeezle, do you need to adjust? She's like, Mom, you're being too animated. I can't fall asleep in your lap when you're so excited. I'm sorry. This is how I feel right now. Anyway, what I got in the records, and we can talk in the records in a minute more to consciousness about this and ask it some questions, was some human beings really need a place to, they need a hierarchy of energies. So we start with getting decent at being with our feelings. We move into spirituality as a way to process our feelings and as a way to know a higher frequency of consciousness. And then when we're ready and we've gotten what we need from spirit, from a spiritual frequency of light, and I'll give some examples of this in a second, we might be ready to sit into the seat of consciousness. Now, other people are going to do that in different orders. Maybe you did a Vipassana retreat or 2 or 3, and you discovered consciousness before you even had any spiritual phenomenon experiences. And that's great. That's fantastic that that's how it's gone for you. But what I've come to see is that spirituality helps people have a place to funnel their emotions into a kind of moral and just system. In other words, if we just had feelings and there were no spiritual principles to function from, we would be even more of a mess than we are right now as a collective, believe it or not. So spirituality is both the teachings of different spiritual paths, it's teachings, mental ideas, but it's also an energetic experience. You can have direct Gnostic in your body experience of God itself. Anybody and everybody can have that. We're in a time period in the collective where you don't need to go through a priest. You can develop your own connection to spirit and to God, and many of us have. God itself comes from or exists in the realm of consciousness. And isn't that interesting? So when you realize that, and there's a lot more I could say about this, but for time, I want to hop into the records of consciousness now. For time, I'll just say, if that's the case, then imagine how much information and insight we can glean by talking directly with consciousness. If God itself is emanating from the realm of consciousness and we get to talk directly with consciousness, that's pretty fucking cool. So, how do you develop these skills? You practice your spiritual practice until consciousness reveals itself to you. You don't always get to determine when that's going to occur unless you're working with a teacher who can take you into those realms because they're skilled at that. But if you're just working on your own, you're going to confront different aspects of the spiritual path and find consciousness when the divine sees that you're ready, as it were. All right. So then the next logical question that could come to your mind listening to me say these words would be, why do we have to go into the Akashic records of consciousness? Why can't we just talk to consciousness itself? Well, if you're good at that, go ahead and do that. I'm not good at that yet. What I'm good at that, my pleasure, Cindy. Thank you. What I'm good at is going into the Akashic records. The Akashic records, let's talk briefly about it, is my personal access point to everything else. The Akashic records allows me access to your individual soul and its alignment to the all that is, the divine, and then the all that is. And it's my entry point into the all that is. It's also my entry point into my higher self and my awareness of the all that is. That's because that's just how my training has gone. And that's just where I've been. I'll have spiritual partners who are my direct link to see, says Bill. Spiritual partners who are my direct link to see, to consciousness. I'm not sure I know what you mean, Bill, but feel free to say more. Okay. So right now, the body, mind, organism called Katie Rubin, when I open the Akashic records using the Akashic records prayer that I tend to use, there are several, I am able to tap into the records of consciousness. Now, in brief, as I pull my prayer up here, I want to explain that the way the records work, the records are, you could think of the Akashic records as a space, another time, space, location in the realm of consciousness that is a very high frequency of light. It's a very bright light space. And from that bright light space, I personally have a connection to the Akasha, the realm of God, that is very strong from all my past lives of being a Sufi master and being in Atlantis and all the crazy shit I've been through in past lives. My soul is just nicely aligned with the frequency of the Akasha. So it's a good doorway for me to see through the veils of 3D reality and 5D reality and beyond. So that's why I use the tool of the Akashic records. We could talk a lot more about that, but in the interest of time, I'm going to hop into them right now. So what you're going to watch me do is I'm going to say, her name is Linda Howe. I'm going to say Linda Howe's Akashic Records prayer. I should know, Linda Howe, first of all, thank you for your prayer. I use it every day, many times a day with all my clients and myself. I so appreciate you. And for everybody watching today's awareness, there are many people who have channeled different Akashic record prayers that work to tap people into the Akashic records. This just happens to be my favorite after having played with several. So sometimes when we do this Katie Church thing on Wednesdays, you guys, it'll be me opening the Akashic records of you, the group that has convened on that particular night. Sometimes I'll open the records of some other group. Sometimes I may not do records at all, but for tonight, I've decided we're going to open the records of consciousness and just see what it has to share with us. And then if you have any questions you want to type in the chat, that's a big yes. Once I'm in the records and once they've shared whatever they want to share with us, I'm happy to take any questions that you guys have for consciousness itself. So we're starting on a nice, light, easy topic for our first ever episode. No big deal. Just the Akashic records of consciousness. So away we go. I'm just listening for. Okay. So if we were opening your records, you guys, I would do a whole grounding exercise for you, and then I would take you through the prayer and so on, but we're not. So I'm just going to hop right into the prayer because they're giving me that I can do that. I'm ready for that. All right. And so we do acknowledge, if you feel like taking a couple deep breaths into your low belly, this will help you ground. Allow your heart to soften a little. Feel into the bottoms of your feet. Feel your sits bones in contact with the chair you're in. Particularly if you're someone who's sensitive and perceptive of energies, since I'm going to be taking myself into the records of consciousness, you might perceive that energy shift, in which case that could be a little ungrounding. So it's good to breathe into the low belly and feel into the bottoms of your feet. Okay. And so we do acknowledge the forces of light, asking for guidance, direction, and courage to know the truth as it is revealed for our highest good and the highest good of everyone connected to us. Holy Spirit of God, protect me, please, from all forms of self-centeredness and direct my attention to the work at hand. Help me to know consciousness itself in the light of the Akashic records. Help me to see consciousness itself through the eyes of the Lords of the Records, and enable me to share the wisdom and compassion that the masters, teachers, and loved ones of consciousness itself have for consciousness itself. And I'll go quiet for just a moment here. All right. And as I'm deepening into the Akashic records of consciousness itself, I'm just asking now the record keepers here to clear, release, uncreate, destroy anything and everything in my field, my emotional body, my physical body, or otherwise that would stand in the way of my being a direct channel for consciousness itself at this moment. I ask that you align me with the frequencies of consciousness here in its records, that I can transmit what it would have stated at this time. Okay, so regularly where consciousness, I've done this now a few times since our taping of the episode. What it starts me with is that it has no point of view. So consciousness has no point of view about where we begin. People often say, what do my guides want me to know? And from a spiritual perspective, and from the perspective of, let's say you have a dead relative on the other side who acts like a guide for you, like a spiritual guide in your life. Your dead Aunt Sally, who's guiding you from the spiritual realms, might have a very clear perspective for you and a very strong point of view about what you need to hear. She might be like, hey, stop dating that guy because he's toxic and don't date him. He's going to lead you to terrible things. But consciousness has no point of view about what choices you make or about what things you learn. It only creates and destroys and expands and grows. It watches, it's aware, and it offers to us the idea that we always have conscious choice. We in human form, we don't always believe we have conscious choice. But when you break it down, there really are not a lot of circumstances under which you don't have choice. Give me a moment. Whew. Now, there may be real trauma-based and societal structures that are in place that make making certain choices quite difficult, slow, hard, long, unfun, painful. Your past may make making certain choices quite difficult. Systemic racism in your collective, okay, as you've all been waking up to, may make you making certain choices difficult if you're a person of color or a woman. There are circumstances in your three-dimensional reality that make you making certain choices harder for you to make. Yes, And it doesn't mean they're unmakeable. You still can make them. Consciousness, we ourselves, we use the we just to, it's the best way your language can filter the experience of what we is. um, Consciousness is concerned only with empowering you to understand you are a sovereign being who can make any choice at any time. You are a sovereign being. When the purpose of developing your spiritual connection and raising your frequency and vibration, which many light workers are talking about in your dimension now, there's a lot of talk of ascension and raising your vibration. The purpose of this is to activate your autonomy, to and the way your autonomy becomes most effectively and potently activated is if the body-mind organism can begin to be thought of by you and your conscious awareness as a machine traveling through time space. So if you think of the machine of you, okay, your body, your mind, your spirit is a machine. The machine is only correctly functioning when it is spiritually, when it is emotionally centered, spiritually aligned, and consciously awakened. Let us repeat this. The body mind organism is a machine, but it's an organic, alive machine that is only really functioning the way it was meant to ultimately evolve into functioning when you are rooted in emotions and then traveling into spirit and then from there awakening to consciousness. When you do that, the body mind organism becomes a healthfully functioning machine. Now, we said this the other day when Katie was channeling for a client and is coming again, which is to say, the collective of humanity was not ready for the machine of the body mind organism of the human system to awaken at this level that it's ready to awaken now before this moment. There have always been individuals who have been ready to awaken to the degree that more of you are ready to do so now. Individuals spread out through the collective, but the collective, a larger number within your collective are ready now for the actual machine of the body mind organism to be correctly and fully activated, turned on, ignited. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that cave people were not using the machine of their body mind organism correctly? In a way, we say yes, but that's because cave people's conscious awareness had not, the human mind, body, being, soul alignment had not evolved to a place where the cave people, many of them, were ready, willing, and able to operate a machine that is this live wiry, that is this activated, that is this conscious. The machine wasn't ready to be fully on. So the machine had to go through evolutionary stages to get to where we are now as a collective, where more and more of you can hear words like these that are being stated today through this body mind organism called Katie Rubin. So because more of you are ready to hear these words, we are driving her to say them. We knock on the door of her mind all the time and go, could you please do a Wednesday weird thing so people will come who are ready to hear? And this brings me to the topic of Atlantis. And we'll speak a little bit about this and we'll say a few more things and then we'll come to your questions in just a moment. During the time of Atlantis, when Atlantis fell, part of why Atlantis fell, those of you who are familiar with this story may know more than we even say here now. When Atlantis fell, it fell because if you imagine, Atlantis was like a big, bright mountain of crystal, awake, alive, aware energy. Spiritually evolved beings in human form were running the place, operating the thing, helping it elevate. And all the rest of humanity was looking up at the hill of Atlantis going, those are the aware people. Those are the wise people. Those are the awake ones, those light-bodied people on the mountain of Atlantis, on the frickin' the hill, the island, whatever you want to call it. it was so obvious where the center of conscious awakening was, that the forces that work against conscious awakening, and you better believe there are forces in the universe actively every day, every minute, working against conscious awakening. They don't want human beings to wake up and become activated light body machine organisms, because then they lose power. There is always somebody or something vying for control and power, because of the nature of dark and light in the universe. The physical phenomena of the universe are held together and stay animated and upright because of polarities, opposites, up, down, left, right, man, woman, dark, light. Now, in the realm of pure consciousness, there is no duality. There's only oneness. There's only conscious awareness. There's no duality. But as you move inward from there, there is duality. And you, in particular, as a human being, live in the realm of dense, dense, dense duality, until you activate your light body and become aware and become consciously awake. And then you start to live in a lot less duality, AKA a lot less judgment. You know, you're really activating when your judgment systems are less loud and you can operate beyond them. You might hear your judgment come up quite loudly and quite clearly, but if you can choose to bring your conscious attention to non-judgment, you're doing quite freaking well in the body of a human. So Atlantis fell because the dark forces in the universe that didn't want conscious awakening to occur for humanity in the first place, they could easily see where the awakening was occurring, right there in Atlantis. So they came around and they tempted the people that could easily be tempted, and they, destroyed the foundation from underneath, and they shot their death rays into the mountain because it was easy to see where it was all happening. So consciousness through the portal of the spiritual vessel of the human organism realized, oh, okay, if we're going to awaken the human race, we're going to need to do it in a more sneaky, dissipated across the planet kind of way. So now what's happening is, many of you listening to this now, and many, many millions of people across the planet are starting to awaken. Their light body is just like slowly coming online. And the way it's functioning, if you can see my fingers, is through like each one of you, think of your body as a blade of grass on the field of the earth. As your light body comes online and you activate your conscious awareness, little blades of grass start to pop up onto the field of the earth. And the forces of darkness can't go, oh, let's fuck around with the light bodies that are popping up in Chechnya, and the light bodies that are popping up in America, and the light bodies that are popping up in South America, because it's all like this, little tiny blades of grass slowly peeking through it's hard to kill off a huge, vast field of little tiny points of light, but it's easy to collapse at one single mountain of light. So consciousness is very smart. Nature, what is the line from Jurassic Park? Nature always finds a way. And nature is surrendered and bowed to the flow of conscious awakening. Nature is always awakening. In the same way that the universe is always expanding, nature is always budding and growing and then dying and budding again and growing and dying. That is consciousness. Okay. So the good news is we've got light workers and light beings and people coming online all over the planet in a way where, if all goes the way we hope, there will be enough light spread across the planet that perhaps there could be a tipping point where the collective of humanity, enough human beings are awake enough and have enough light through their hearts that humanity itself could elevate to a higher form of consciousness. That's the hope. And it looks like it'll be like a 500-year process. Now, sometimes when I'm in the records, they're like, don't say the number of years for people, because people get discouraged. If you go 500 years, people go, well, I don't have any effect on fucking 500 years from now. Fuck it. And they stop working. That's not true, as is evidenced by global warming and the problems on our planet and politics and everything crazy that's happening. When humans don't get on board with their own conscious awakening, the entire collective is affected. And the entire future of this race on this planet is affected in a profound way. So it's not to be taken lightly. Your efforts today on your teeny tiny little life matter a lot for the future of humanity's wellness in general. Okay. All right, let's see. I'm going to look at some of these questions now that you guys are typing, and I'm going to try to really listen hard to what consciousness is saying. So who has a question? Please feel free to type it in. I see Leslie sent me some. Sandy Wilson. Greed is rampant. How can I fight it? I mean, how do I deal with the anger this brings up? Okay, good. Good question, Sandy. The answer to any question about how you deal with any anger that comes up is you sit in the middle of it. Don't run away from it. Don't hide it. Don't bury it in your body. Don't spiritually bypass it. Sit into the center of it and let it seethe within you. Be angry, Sandy Wilson, inside yourself, and let the anger burn off. Ideally, my framework here, let's see, how do they want to say it? When you bring the light of spirit, divine light healing, for example, or whatever your spiritual practice might be, Sandy, when you bring the light of spirit into that anger, it will dissipate and release the anger so that as you go forward, you can respond to greed in a less reactive way. Some of your anger about greed is appropriate, righteous, aligned anger, and is an energy that will motivate you to do something about it. So part of the response is use your anger to fucking do something about it. But another part of the response is that anger is so hot, Sandy, in your body. It's so angry because it's not actually about the greed you're seeing outside yourself. It's about something from your past that activated this level of anger. So you want to feel into that anger, bring some light into it, or you could say, if you want to use different language, meditate on it, or you could say, go to therapy about it, or you could say, have a session with Katie Rubin about it. So we can bring light to it, dissipate it, get clear about what that's really about. Because everybody from the outside that's happening is always 100% of the time a reflection of something going on in you. So 9 times out of 10, the answer is, what do I do with that uncomfortable feeling? Feel into it more, bring your conscious awareness practice to it, and then it will dissipate and integrate into yourself so you're not walking around so pissed anymore. Anytime I'm real pissed about stuff, I know I have to do some work. I got to sit down and process. Okay, really good question, Sandy. And if we had more time, we would do a healing for the group on anger, but we will do that another time. Other questions that people have, please throw them in the chat now. Please, please, please. Let's see. Bill said a while ago, is consciousness always positive energy? No. Good question. Okay. Positive energy. They almost go, what does that even mean? Positive. Because remember, from the point of view of consciousness, there's no positive or negative. There's no polarity. There's just energies. So some energies, Bill, yes, Bill, some energies destroy planets or kill babies or end solar systems. And that's just what's happening in the process of creation, destruction, birth, death, life, birth, death, life, birth, death, life, right? Consciousness like builds universes and then they fucking blow out. Suns come into being and then explode and destroy all the planets around them. Was that positive or negative? It just was. It just occurred through the point of view of consciousness. Now, in your life, when you have, relationships with people and you say something harmful or cruel or judgmental, that is not positive. It's negative in the sense that you hurt the heart of that one in front of you. And yet we could argue from the perspective of consciousness that itself wasn't even negative, because if you learn from it and wake up to what you have chosen and realize the impact of your actions, it wasn't negative. It was a positive thing because you learned from it. Now, this is an important point to get. Notice when we're talking about something relational, we have contracted and collapsed back from the infinite realm of consciousness, and we're back into the relative realm between human hearts. Between human hearts, Spirituality and emotions are relevant. They matter. But from the cosmic perspective, they don't matter kind of at all. In the sense of they're neither good nor bad. They're just what's occurring. So I hope that helps a little bit, and I hope that makes some sense. Other questions folks have for consciousness. Come on, you guys. I have consciousness here on the line. You can ask questions. Let's see. Cindy, is that a question she wrote? I just learned about DNA repair and have been drawn to this to teach it. As a yoga teacher and a healer, is this what idea I'm supposed to make more and more aware? This is easier than known. I'm not sure what that means, but I think you're asking, is this something for you to teach? DNA repair. Yeah, absolutely. Anything that facilitates healing for the human organism is something to teach if you are drawn to teach it. If you're drawn to it and excited about it, yes, please teach it. DNA repair is very healthy, very healing. As a yoga teacher and healer, is this what idea I'm supposed to make more and more aware? Well, if I'm misunderstanding that question, Cindy, please let me know. Bill asks, are we assisted by higher beings, spiritual masters? Absolutely. 1,000,000% yes. Part of what we can do on the spiritual path is get clear, Bill, about who our ascended masters are, who our master mentor teachers are, who our spirit guides are. Absolutely. Now, what you're talking about, Bill, is happening in the realm of spirit, which, remember, consciousness is the place where spirit is occurring, you could say, to break it down simply. But absolutely, we are helped by higher beings. I teach a class called Star Beings, where the whole point of that whole class is to bring the frequencies of light and the teachings of the star beings, which are more evolved beings than us, and they serve the light, so they're healthy, to bring their energies and their teachings through my body and my face for the sake of my students, to activate their light body, to wake them up and make them more conscious. So absolutely, we have spiritual masters and higher beings. Okay, other questions? Cindy, am I supposed to teach to the masses? I get a no, and I think that's because when you say to the masses, it implies like a huge number. If that's what you mean, like speak on the world stage, that doesn't read like a yes, but teach to whomever will hear you. Yes, that reads like a yes. Okay, other questions people have for consciousness. We have 1 minute left, you guys. I'll probably go 2 minutes over today. If Leslie, can I go 2 minutes over, or does this thing end sharp on the dot at 6:30? I'm asking Leslie out loud, but I should be typing to her in the chat. Let me know, Leslie, when you have a second. Okay, am I supposed to, let's see. Emily Sand Phillips. Emily, is that your name? Emily, yes. Okay, great. Good questions, you guys. We have a few questions here. No, I can go as long as I wish. Okay, great. We'll take another 5 minutes at least. Okay, am I, Emily Sand Phillips, supposed to pursue a career in music? Well, what I get is you sure want to, don't you? And you sure would be fulfilled by it. Yes. Will you need to do other stuff sometimes to support that career? Yes. Oh, but how your heart sings, when you think of doing it. Your heart sings. Why would you not do what makes your heart sing? And any reason you can come up with is a lie. All right, Deirdre Duff Allen, what does consciousness say about timed laughter practice? I need a more specific question. What do you actually want to know? Could you hone that in for me a little, Deirdre, and then I'll come back to you. Steve Spar says, do the record keepers appreciate appreciation, gratitude? Absolutely. Great question, Steve, because gratitude is a spiritual energy that comes from the heart, the human heart, or we could say it comes through the heart and is expressed through the heart. And when human beings express heart-based emotional gratitude for the Akashic record keepers, who are ascended ascended beings that are essentially spiritual in nature. Remember, spirit for a human happens through the heart. Heart is the portal of spirit. So any energy that you can do that is the human form of spirit energy, aka gratitude, is very deeply received because the record keepers understand how difficult it is for human beings to do spiritual energy. Like when anybody's trying any spiritual shit ever, the fucking angels are singing and dancing. They love it. They feel seen, they feel acknowledged, they feel heard. But mostly they are happy for us. So like when you're grateful to the record keepers, they're like, ah, she gets it. He gets it. Hooray. Light, love, more light. Gratitude is always welcome and encouraged in the spiritual realm. Really great question. Cindy, should I teach DNA repair to my community? Yes, if you desire to. Yes. Ray, hi Ray, I didn't know you're here. Good to see you. How do we get clarity about who our guides are? Yeah, I mean, you can ask me in a session and we can get really clear about it. I tend to have to open the Akashic records to find stuff like that out. Different psychic mediums can just see it. They'll just go like, oh, look at that. You have an angel and another angel and there's your grandpa. So it just depends on who you're asking. But a longer answer to the question and a deeper one would be develop your spiritual connection, make it lighter, brighter, stronger through your heart vessel. Raise your frequency more and you'll start to know because you'll be able to have direct Gnostic awareness. Gnostic, you guys, means like you feel it and you know it in your body yourself. So activate your light body further, Ray. Develop your spiritual connection more brightly as a direct alignment that you have, and you'll be able to know who your spirit guides are. Till then, go to an intermediary that you trust and ask them to find out for you. Okay, let me take a couple more of these. Steve says, thank you. Huge thank you to the record keepers. I know, right? I know. Thank you, record keepers of consciousness. I feel grateful for you. And so is Steve. Totally. We are so blessed. You guys, that's the coolest thing about all this stuff. We get into so much judgment about spirituality. My God, should I do it? Shouldn't I? The religions of my past. My mom said I should, so I rebel against it. The culture says you should, so I rebel against it. My husband doesn't believe it, so there's so much shit around it. But the bottom line is when we activate our spiritual connection, we get so many gifts. We just get gifts. Everything gets cooler, brighter, and happier. So like, why not? So thank you for that, Steve. Gratitude to all beings. Love it. Exactly, Cindy. Thank you for that. Awesome. I've created, Deirdre says, this practice of intentional laughter, and it's one of those things. It won't leave me alone. Is it time to expand to others or move on and create something? It's not something new. No, I think it's okay. Rather than the words expand to others, although I know what you mean, I'll put it this way. Deirdre Duff Allen, just bringing your energy into my field of awareness. Yeah, this is part of your healing, Deirdre. As you bring it to others and form, I see it's like little groups, little circles of people who do it on a Tuesday, and then other people do it on a Saturday, and then a Tuesday, and then a Saturday. And as you do it, it brings healing to you and it expands your community and it brings a lot of joy. Laughter yoga is a thing. Like a lot of people do it. I have a friend who facilitates it in California. I don't know if that's what you mean, like if you've done those trainings or not, but they exist. And it's a really popular, well, I shouldn't say really popular. It's popular among certain brands of woo-woo people like us. So you're very supported in the realms of consciousness and spiritual awareness. Absolutely. So there's healing for you in it, Deirdre. And there's also something about, don't resist, Deirdre, if you can, the tears that come up. You probably aren't resisting this already, but when you laugh, sometimes you're going to end in tears, and that is really healthy. And they want you to remember to stay really vulnerable with your students. When you lead a group, stay vulnerable and let them see you go through your pain. That's really empowering to them because it empowers them to go through their pain and it empowers them to activate into joy. So 100% yes, it's time to do that. My pleasure, Ray. Thank you for that. Some feel hidden. I totally get it. Yeah. So you just keep activating your spiritual body and nothing will be hidden. It just takes time. It's just time in the game. You're killing it. You're murdering it. It's already dead because you killed it. You got your spirit knife out and you stabbed it in the chest. Well done. All right. I'll take one more question if anybody has one more question, and then we will wrap it up for today. You guys, I just want to say, like, What a freaking delight this has been. Thank you for being here. Really, again, part of my soul's work and my dharma is fulfilled by you showing up here. So I have deep gratitude for you guys that I get to freaking channel the record keepers of consciousness. It's a wild thing to get to do. And I bow to you with deep gratitude and humility. And I thank you for being here. We are going to be here every Wednesday. I'm going to do this as long as spirit asks me to, and consciousness keeps poking me about it. Couple things to leave you with. If you're looking to activate your light body and have a more direct connection with spirit yourself, join Star Beings class. Actually, message me privately. I'm going to throw my email in the chat here. Message me about Star Beings class, and we'll have a chat and see if it's the right class for you. It's kind of a mid-level to advanced class, but pretty much if you're here doing this, you're probably ready for Star Beings class. We start Tuesdays. This next round is on Tuesdays, and we start February 22nd. So check that out. Also, always visit katierubin.com to book a private Akashic Records reading and or energy healing when you're ready for that. That's in the chat. Can we sing? I thought there would be hymns. Steve, you can sing in your living room anytime. I am not the boss of what goes on in your living room. You sing. But that's a fun idea. Maybe I'll bring some kind of like non-churchy hymn to the next Wednesday event. Last thing I want to share. Oh, my writing class. So I have a writing class called Writing in Alignment, and that starts again on next Thursday. We have a day class and a night class. And if you're like a spiritual person who's looking to channel write and get out of your own way, we have a really cool way to make that happen. And we have an amazingly intelligent group of very talented writers. So join us for that. Email me about it and I'll fill you in. One last question. Does connecting to consciousness mean that our physical body needs to be relaxed, free, and calm? I get a no. Okay, what does that mean? Does connecting to consciousness mean that our physical body... Okay. You need to be able to connect with it, which happens through the heart and the awakened mind. So sometimes parts of your body do not have to be, no, they won't be perfectly relaxed and calm. I find that relaxing and being calm helps me, but it's not required. It's not actually required. But if you want to connect to spirit, I do find it tends to be incredibly helpful. Okay, I guess we could talk about that a long time. I really appreciate you guys. I'm going to sign off for here now. Jamie commented on the personal page. Thank you for doing this. My pleasure, Jamie. I'm so glad you were here. What a treat and a delight this has been. I'm going to close the records of consciousness now. I want to thank the masters, teachers, and loved ones for their love and compassion. The Lords of the Records for their point of view, and the Holy Spirit of Light for all knowledge and healing. I ask that you return consciousness to itself, I guess. Yeah, and I ask that you return me to my complete human wholeness, and anyone listening to this who was taken out of their body or expanded in a way that's ungrounding, I ask that you return us all to our complete human wholeness now. The divine portal and the Akashic records of consciousness are now closed. Amen. The divine portal and the Akashic records of consciousness are now closed. Amen. The divine portal and the Akashic records of consciousness are now closed. Aren't they, Squeezel? Let's take one last look at the adorability happening right here. Yeah, I see you. All the people need to see you because you're the most spiritual being of all. I love you guys so much. Thank you. Thank you, John, for being here. What a treat to see you. Oh my gosh, so glad you were here. Good to see everybody. And we will see you next Wednesday. Come to Star Beings class, come to writing class. Stay on my mailing list if you're on it already, because John Maletta and I are going to do some cool projects together through OMA, some more comedy stuff and cool stuff like that. So we'll be in touch with everybody. I love you guys. Have a great night. Breathe deep. Go slow. Bye.